When we hear the word story, we think of something someone created. We think of fiction. In the 20 years of Crossroads Fellowship, there have been many stories. Not of fiction, but real accounts of life. Real people's lives. Your lives. These are those stories.
As a matter of fact, I just flat out blatantly said over and over, I will not pastor. As we close out This Is My Story, I found it fitting to take a little bit of my own medicine, since I'm always interviewing people, and to share a little bit of my own story. It's a story that I believe is pertinent to the topic today. Today's message is the one thing you lack, and that's really my story about the one thing you lack. I was really the rich young ruler that we're going to talk about today. I struggled to do what God called me to do. As a matter of fact, I just flat out blatantly said over and over, I will not pastor. Even though I was called at a young age, I just was not going to do it. It was something that I battled with for a long time. God had called me to the ministry, but that's not what I wanted to do. I had other plans. I had other desires. My desires and my selfishness had pushed me in a place where I wanted to make something of myself. All my self-worth was built in building a business and being successful and being the guy. I wanted to be the guy. So business and being successful really became the number one most important thing in my life. Everything was built around that. Everything was built around getting up that day and attacking it and proving to everyone that I could be successful. And since business was my life, I would give God some. I would go to church, but I wasn't going to give it all. So, I grew up in church, but when it really came down to it, there was one place in me that God was just not going to get. I was a jeweler for a lot of years, and I was in the jewelry business. I did that for almost 15 years. And when I look back, I see there was these times where God was calling me. He was calling me deeper. He was saying, lay down this because I've called you to pastor. There were times that it literally became a fight inside of me where I knew what I was supposed to be doing, but I was just not going to do it. I was resisting God on every level. And I remember there were times I would get close. I would take a servant job in church, working as an usher, or at one time back in 2011, I was going to another church here in town, and I went to a layman's Bible school, and I was serving on some level, but I wouldn't fully commit. I remember one specific time, two of my really good friends at that church did a really godly thing, and they set me down and said, hey, Ryan, I don't know what's going on, but it's like you want to be in the ministry, but you also you're stuck in business too at the same time. It's as if you're torn or you're split. And they as friends, they called out some things in my life, some things that were going on that weren't right at the time. And I remember one of them saying to me, man, when I see you, I see a dude that loves the Lord and you want to help people and you're so humble. He's like, but I see a little bit of the rich young ruler in you. And that really resonated with me, because that was the thing that God had been convicting me of, was that I was just like the rich young ruler. I had done all these things since my youth. I had done all these things I was supposed to do, all the parts, but there was one big piece that I was like, God, you're not going to get. Like many of you out there, it made me miserable when I was stuck in between what God was calling me to and doing what I wanted to do. There was this conflict going on inside of me. And after those friends confronted me, I did a really holy biblical turn and did absolutely nothing about it. As a matter of fact, I actually doubled down and ran away even harder, to a place where I dove into business even harder. I stopped going to church. I got into difficult times and sin and circumstances, and really built business up bigger and better than ever. I just doubled down on the whole thing and put God completely on the back burner until all that came tumbling down. And I remember sitting there at the height of business, at the height of success, being on all the commercials for the business I worked at and doing all that, and I was miserable. And I remember getting to a place of brokenness where God again called me and said, one thing you still lack. Leave all that behind and come and follow me. And I knew what that meant. I knew to come and follow him meant to lay down the life that I'd been living and to step out in faith. When I got to the most broken place in my life, I got to a place finally where I said, Lord, I will do whatever you want me to do. And that is the point when I finally surrendered. When I finally was able to just lay it down and quit and say, you know what, Lord, your way, not mine. That's the point when finally God said, all right, now there's something I can work with here. Because that first step of obedience is really the hardest. When Jesus says, this one thing you still lack, just come and follow me. And what I found was that he was going to sustain me the whole way. All I had to do was trust him. And everything that I thought was my security, everything I thought that was helping me and saving me and was bringing me happiness and bringing me security was really the very thing that was holding me back. Every one of us has that one thing that we have to lay down at his feet. Today's message is really about laying it down. And that's what my testimony is. It was surrender. It was laying it down and trusting him. And I hope this story helps you. I hope it gives you some hope. But more than anything, I hope it inspires you to say, Lord, what's the one thing I still lack?